day 2, and I'll be reading the introduction to Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools. It's eerily quiet tonight in the city that never sleeps. The sirens and car horns, street noise from passerby, crowded restaurants and rambunctious bars, the soundtrack humming beneath the life I've known for, going on 12 years now. It's all gone silent. You can hear a pin drop in New York City. I'm writing to you from the modest kitchen of my cozy Brooklyn apartment. The year is 2020, and the COVID-19 pandemic has caused unprecedented suffering, a startling interruption to normal life, and a profound loss of security and control, not to mention a lie. Loss of control comes in an endless variety of forms: a car accident, a phone call, a financial hole we can't climb out of, a relationship we're unable to repair, or a global pandemic. Whatever its origin, it all leads to the same place: a search for help outside the self. How am I going to get through this? Why is this happening? What could possibly change the narrative? For many, those sorts of questions brought on by outside events produced an internal response: prayer. Of course, for every person desperately turning to prayer in 2020, there was someone looking at the same widespread crisis and saying, "Good riddance to God." Yeah. On one side of the coin, the coronavirus pandemic is an event causing many comfortable agnostics to turn to prayer. On the other side of that very coin, though, the praying voices of many faithful churchgoers have gone silent, banished from their church. The same set of circumstances has the world turning to God has the church being turned from God. The world knocks on the doors of the church, but those in the pews are being scrambled for the exits. For each one desperately whispering help to God in the past year, there was another dejectedly whispering, "You're no help at all." Both people experience the same circumstances, talking to the same God. Both are forms of prayer. Both, in fact, are biblical prayers. The phenomenon of prayer. Already today, before you read these words, plenty of people have prayed. Catholics have recited the poetic prayers of the historic saints. Hail Mary, full of grace. Muslims have spread out their rugs, bowed their foreheads to the ground, and begun chanting the Quran in unison. Killed the Christians. Jews have written pleas to Yahweh on small pieces of paper, rolled them up, wedged them into Jerusalem's Wailing Wall. Buddhists have meditatively emptied themselves, searching for an enlightened state of self-forgiveness. Tibetan monks have spun a wheel that holds the wadded up pages of prayer journals, like a game of divine roulette. Yeah, Russian roulette. And somewhere, a staunch, convinced atheist in a hospital waiting room has buried his head in his hands and muttered a few desperate words to a guy he doesn't even believe is there to listen. And all that was today before you read these words. If you are a church-going Christian in the West, you become a sociological anomaly. Rule of thumb. The Western churches declined in essentially every statistical measure except for growth. Still, in a society losing interest and growing suspicious of the church, prayer isn't going anywhere. According to reliable Gallup research, more Americans will pray in a given week than will exercise, drive a car, have sex, or go to work. They don't have to work, no. And an increasing it's not post-Christian America. Near half of the population still admits praying daily, a number that dwarfs the nation's church attendance. Any way you measure it, prayer is bigger than the church. It's not even close. Everybody prays. Everybody always has prayed. And there's no end in sight. Prayer seems to be an instinctive part of human nature. Primitive peoples and enlightened Westerners, rural homesteaders and urban dwelling professionals, stay-at-home moms, and touring musicians. insecure artists, and ruthless investors, doubting atheists, and devout creationists, they're all praying. In the words of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, prayer is our humble answer to the inconceivable surprise of living. We pray, we can't help it. Prayer invites you to listen to God before speaking, to ask like a child in your old age, to scream your questions in an angry tirade, to undress yourself in vulnerable confession, and to be loved, completely and totally loved in spite of everything. Yet most people, even most Bible-believing Christians, find little life in prayer. What? Prayer is boring or obligatory or confusing or at most all of the above. No. The mystery of the middle. Mystery in the middle. Stories are often told of dramatic answers to prayer. Stories that begin with desperate need and end with miraculous intervention. I'm not too interested in the beginning or even the end of the story when it comes to prayer, though. What I'm interested in is the middle. The middle is where the mystery lies. The middle is where all our questions about prayer are littered. Is prayer really necessary? If God is all powerful, that means he accomplishes what he wants when he wants, right? No. So why does he need to ask me? Prayer makes a difference. Why does God sometimes seem to answer prayers, but only after a long period of asking? If the answer was yes, why did you make me sweat it out? Why doesn't God answer my prayers for lost friends and family? I mean, he wants to redeem the world, right? He wants a relationship with every person. He wants to answer prayer. So if every box is checked, why is it happening? You have not because you ask not, and you're asking the wrong reason. That's why. I know we have a spiritual enemy, but if Jesus was victorious over Satan, then is there any real opposition left to interfere with my prayers? He's still king of the world. What is actually happening when I pray? If anything happening, is anything happening because I prayed that it was not going to happen if I didn't? Or is anything not happening because I prayed that was bound to happen otherwise? You got that? Do my prayers actually matter? Do they matter to God? And do they matter in real life in the real world? Yes, they do. At the end of the day, what is happening in the middle? This book is precisely about that. The mystery in the middle of our prayers. I still ain't seen the middle. Saints, sleepwalkers, and skeptics. I'm writing on prayer because prayer is a dangerous pilgrimage I'm on. And like a walk on the Camino del San Diego, it's as arduous and as advertised and even more worth it than anticipated. I'm writing on prayer because I love the church. I believe the Christian church is the hope of the world. I also love the generations who are shrugging off the church, not because of spiritual disinterest, but because they're taking the sincerity of their spiritual search elsewhere. I'm writing on prayer because I trust to be God. I trust God to be God. I'm not God. I really believe that those who seek him will surely find him. I believe that God is loving enough that a conversation starter is all he needs to draw someone all the way home. If he's chosen them, sure. I'm writing to saints, sleepwalkers, and skeptics. Yeah, that's the title. To the saints, this book is an invitation into the deep end of the pool. These pages hold a collection of treasures from various eras and expressions in the Christian tradition, from the great cloud of biblical witnesses to desert mothers and fathers, to Benedictine and Eastern Orthodox monks, to Catholic philosophers, fiery reformers, and modern evangelicals. Most of us get about knee-deep in the Christian life, discover that the water feels fine and stops there. We never swim in the depths of the divine intimacy Jesus won for us. This book is an invitation to swim. Jump in the deep end. Deep in. To the sleepwalkers, this book is a bucket of cold water doused over your drowsy head. Be careful. Far too many of us find God admirable but boring. The spiritual life is the right way, the good way, but excitement is found in our social calendars, favorite sports teams, Go Dallas Cowboys. Sexual conquests or career trajectories. There is a tragic disconnect between the sacred and secular in today's Christianity that has led to an unbiblical divorce between a spiritual life made up of activities like scripture reading, prayer, and if you're going for extra credit, tithing. No, that should be the basic, And a normal life made up of basically everything else. To the skeptics, this book is an invitation to what cannot be taught, only discovered. It's written as an open invitation to get off the comfortable fence of ultimate uncertainty and find out if God is really knowable or not. No, He is. An invitation to be found by God in the place He's most faithfully been found throughout history, not in a mega church with Broadway lights, rock star preachers, and arena rock fog machines, or in the eloquent podcast of a contrarian thinker like me. But in the bare silence of you and the endless expanse beyond you, is there an infinitely loving, altogether good author behind this grand story or not? Yeah, it is. And if there is, what are the chances he's gently trying to catch my attention? 100%. The answers to those questions can only be discovered. This book is an invitation to discovery through prayer. Prayer is the intersection between an out-of-touch Western church, no, I don't think so, and a spiritually curious Western world. In an increasingly post-Christian America, while was 4,611 people baptized last week, spiritually interested and religiously suspicious, thirsty for mystical experience, but bear me the advice of anyone deemed a professional. Thank you very much. Prayer is the one aspect of the historic Orthodox Christian faith that isn't threatening to the emerging socio-cultural climate surrounding the church. In fact, it's inviting, unless you get arrested. Prayer is also the theme of my life. It has been up to this point, and it will be for however many days I get to live in this occasionally beautiful, often dark world. Prayer is how I discovered God. Prayer is why I became a pastor. Prayer is the source of my life's greatest celebrations, most heart-rendering disappointments, and most confusing and still unanswered questions. Prayer is not a soft place to lay our heads or a workout routine for burning spiritual fat. It's a wild, unpredictable adventure that only those brave enough to strip themselves of artificial identities, get the wind completely knocked out of them a time or two, and see beauty in mystery that will ever take. See beauty in mystery. I don't sound right. Proceed with caution. No, go in with reckless abandon. Prayer is not for the faint of heart. Praying like monks, living like fools is a catalog of prayer, each chapter ending with the invitation to practice, a simple starting place for moving past consideration to discovery. Don't read this book for its content or listen to someone reading the book. Read its content, listen to its content for its practices. The real treasures are found when you close the book and begin the conversation. Well, begin the conversation before you open the book. That's where you're headed. That's where we're headed. That's where you're headed, where I'm headed. But this story begins in a very ordinary place, the parking lot of a public middle school. Dum-da-dum-dum. That's it for tonight. 14 minutes and 20 seconds. Bye.